So the fishing deal. So things are mixed, is what the Brexiteer position seems to be, but overall, you know, much better than people were expecting from anyone cuckolding. So it's overall good in my opinion from what I've read. But we'll go through it and then you can make your own opinion. So the first part here is from the BBC, just giving us 10 bits of information about what does it mean, and the two bullet points from this is there's a UK increase in the amount of fish in our waters we'll get, and an EU decrease. And proportionately in EU waters, there'll be a UK decrease in the amount and an EU increase. So shifting more of the catch to your own waters. And that after 2026, the UK has the right to completely exclude EU boats. So we could say, actually, we're just going to take all of the fish, get stuffed. Good. But this gets a little bit more complex. So the Guardian and left-wing media have been running this headline that Boris has betrayed UK fishermen, the fishing industry is being destroyed by this deal, you cannot back this deal. And you see that today in the Parliament. I think they're debating it right now with the SNP, the Greens, all of the leftists trying to say this deal, we're not going to vote for it, no one can back this. And Keir Starmer ripping into them, which we'll get into in a minute. So the Guardian takes a quote here from the National Federation of Fishermen's Organisation, claiming that this deal is bad. They say, there have been some marginal changes on the quota shares, but were tied back into an agreement that gives access to the EU fleet to our waters, up to 6 miles of a limit. So they're upset that the EU still has access. It's not 100% UK fishing is done by UK fishermen. We get the full quota, which is okay. He can be upset about that. I'm a little bit not that bothered because, he is a lobbyist for the fishing industry. Of course, he's going to say this is not, exactly what I want. I want everything possible. So, okay. But the interesting point is this is the left-wing Remainer press who was saying, Remain's the only option. But the Brexiteers seem to be getting around this deal. So the first part here is the European Research Group backing the deal. So they reviewed it and released a paper saying, okay, it's got these problems, but on balance, here's our view. So they wrote, our overall conclusion is that the agreement preserves the UK's sovereignty as a matter of law and fully respects the norms of international sovereign-to-sovereign treaties. And talking about level playing fields, they do not prevent the UK from changing its laws as it sees fit, at a risk of tariff countermeasures. And if those were unacceptable, the agreement could be terminated within 12 months' notice. So, there's a transition period going on, and the best source I could find to explain the smaller details of this was from TRDL News, which I don't know if people might know or not. The next link, John. So they're just a nice channel. I think they're fairly objective. I want to give them a bit of a plug because they did a good job here at explaining it. So there's So at the moment, the UK has 50% of the quota of all the fish in the UK seas. And the rest of it is divided up, a third of it going to the EU and the rest of it going to Norway and the Faroe Islands. And with the UK fishing industry not being a massive part of the UK economy, people tend to ignore it, but the fundamental problem here and the fundamental argument during Brexit was obviously, these are our fish, these are our waters. Okay, it might not be a massive part of the economy, but surely we are the ones who should have the right over these things. Seems true to me. Mm-hmm. So the agreement is over the next 5 years, there will be a transition so that the UK will go from 50 to 58%, and the EU will go from 25 and down a few percentage. I didn't write the list. Oh, no, sorry. They go from 33 to 25. So it's not a massive change, and that's what the fisheries guy is upset about. And I can see why you'd be upset about that. People were expecting more. But after the 5 years, it's then every single year the UK and the EU have to meet and negotiate what next year's quotas will be. So you could continue to take that down all the way. And as mentioned, by 2026, you can just ban EU fishing boats if you want. But the countermeasure will be the EU will put tariffs on fish, and then we'll have to sell them somewhere else, and they'll be frozen, so they'll be worth less. So that's what it is. But the fundamental point there is that at the end of that transition period, we own the fish. We're negotiating how much we should allow for each other, because we're also allowed to fish in their waters to some amount. So,
yeah, I don't have any problem with this at all. I do appreciate that people wanted everything on day one. But like you said, in 5 years' time, ultimate decision-making power is with us. And over the course of 5 years, 5 years isn't really that long a time. And at least there will be a gradual improvement over this time from the EU going down from 33 to 25, whatever the numbers were. And then it's just entirely within our decision-making capacity. So, sure, it's slower, but it does get us the result that we want.
Yeah, I mean, that's why the ERG on reflection are saying, well, okay, on this issue of fishing, for example, we might not be getting precisely what we wanted on day one, but after a set amount of time, we have the sovereignty. The fundamentals are that we are in charge of our affairs. Fine. I mean, that's what the Brexit argument was about. It wasn't about the money, it was about sovereignty.
Yeah.
So, Nigel Farage has written a response to this in the Telegraph, and I thought I'd better bring him up because he's love him or love him, love him or hate him, he's Mr. Brexit. He's the guy who got it. So, his response is that Boris has betrayed fishermen, but still deserves credit for bringing the Brexit wars to an end. And he has some interesting quotes on this along those lines that we mentioned. I would have preferred a no-deal Brexit, a clean break. Whatever short-term disruption this brought would have been the best path to prosperity. Yet through the talk with Downing Street recently, this was never going to happen. No deal was just a negotiating position. Had Boris Johnson gone for no deal, he would have had to reopen the fault line of the EU within his own party, and the business establishment would have cried foul. The Brexit wars would have dragged on. So the point here that he would have preferred no deal, but realpolitik, the Conservative Party is the Conservative Party, not perfect, saying it lightly. And this would have dragged on for another, 2 years or whatever. It's already been 4 years since people voted to leave.
Yeah.
And it's got another section here. So talking about, I just took a few other bits out. So he was saying that we were initially expecting the EU quota to be cut down by 80% instead of 25%. So it would have been next to nothing of the quota they would have had instead, which we don't. Yeah. They still get a considerable amount. But he's also annoyed about the fact that even if in 2026 the UK wants to increase its quota to 100%, we'd have to pay compensation to the EU, and he says this is an outrageous humiliation. My understanding is that's not quite true, because the compensation would be the increased tariffs, and we still have access to their waters to fish to some degree, so that's the trade-off. So yeah, that's what I understand about that. And his response, which I quite like, the EU should be paying Britain to fish up to 6 miles within its waters. So if they should have any amount, they should be paying us. Which, yeah, well, I like the rhetoric, but if we also have the ability to fish in their waters, it seems like a fair trade-off to me.
And not only that, like, we're looking to the long term here, right? So again, this is why I was like, well, 5 years, that's not that bad. Because I'm just thinking in generations to come, where do I want decision-making power to reside? And I would like it to be in Britain rather than the European Union. And I would happily take a deal that I was not particularly happy with if it meant that ultimately that decision-making power was, in my hands if I was the one in charge. So yeah, like you've got to accept the European Union is an actor and has its own interests and it has demands and claims of its own. So they'll say something like, "Well, you'll destroy our industries on day one. This is an unacceptable thing," and from their perspective, it is unacceptable. So you have to give some ground if you want to get some ground. And I think this is a fairly good deal, to be honest. Like, as things go, I'm not disappointed with this, really.
I mean, that's the point. The fundamental argument from the Brexiteers and the thing to keep Brexiteers happy was the sovereignty. So one of the issues with, as TRDL News explains, is that the quota for the British side is still determined by Westminster as to which companies get that percentage. So we before we leave, have 50%, and 25% of that quota was being handed out by the British government to a Dutch company. And of course, that's an argument from people saying, well, why are you giving away our quota to an EU company? Yeah. But that means that now, instead of being able to say, oh, well, the whole quota is handled by the EU, I can't do anything, governor. No, all of this power is now in Westminster, so you could say to the MPs, you can't fob this off anymore, this is your fault. And therefore there is accountability there.
Yep.
But Nigel Farage ends with this saying, no peace is perfect, and Britain must be vigilant in the coming weeks and months. The grassroots campaign to win back Britain's independence has triumphed against the Westminster establishment. That surely is worth celebrating. So, a reserved take in saying that he thinks there are problems with it, but ultimately there were going to be compromises. This gets the sovereignty back. So fine. That's his view. As for the sort of realpolitik of this, so if we get the YouGov poll up, YouGov have done some polling. YouGov's a bit weird at times, I know, but overwhelming support from the public, it seems, to pass this, which would stand in line with the fact that the Brexiteers seem to be fine with it. And Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, has whipped his own party into saying you have to vote for this. So even if you are a hardcore Remainer within the Labour Party, he's saying, no, we're voting for this deal. No questions. And this, I think this is smart politicking from him. So he makes the point in this video, we won't play it, that if you're the real situation is it's this deal or no deal at this point. There's 2 days left before WTO becomes law. So if you're a Labour Party Remainer and you're voting against this deal, you're just voting for no deal. So you're voting with the Brexiteers. So, which based, but
you're voting the Farage choice.
Yeah, so it's got Labour Party backing, and also the Conservatives are going to vote for it, obviously. So they'll have the votes. The votes will be plenty, and this will pass.
Yeah.
But the hilarity of already the SNP, the Greens, and I think some of the Labour Party MPs are rebelling, saying, "No, this is horrible. How can you back Boris Johnson's Brexit deal, and how can you support Brexit?" And it's like, well, look, if you don't, we're getting no deal. So.
It's just derangement syndrome, though, isn't it? Like, how could you back Trump saying, I want $2,000 stimulus checks? Well, because that's just a bipartisan good. This is good for the country to have control of its waters and have a good deal rather than no deal, as far as you were concerned. So the fact that this is now Boris arranging this, I guess this is Boris's victory over them. This is them having to kind of bend the knee. We're like, well, okay, fair enough, Boris. You've put us in a position where we now have to vote for you, or we're voting for Nigel Farage.
Yeah, so it's smart politicking either way. I've not got very strong views on this, but I can see why the Brexiteers are okay with it. I can see why the Remainers, quite frankly, need to just give it up, and that's Starmer's position, which is just give it up. This is done, and rightfully, Nigel Farage is pointing out. Look, at least this is over now. Like, we have the sovereignty bit. You may not have the perfect monetary trade part. You don't have all the fishing. This is just for fisheries, but it's similar elsewhere, as the ERG say. That's fine though. We can live with that. As you say, what will your kids be dealing with? Well, they will be able to point to Westminster and say they're in charge of the country, and if something's been messed up by them, it is only them who are to blame. Therefore, we get rid of them. You get rid of the politicians who did the bad things. But when we were in the EU, you couldn't. You literally can't. Like, some bureaucrat can decide something, and he's completely unelected. Nothing you can do.
Even worse, it might not even be a bureaucrat. It could be someone in the commission or something. Again, nothing you can do.
No.
Could be someone in another country. Nothing you can do.